to start the program by acknowledging our Attorney General and for him to share with you. John O'Connor was appointed as Oklahoma's 19th Attorney General by Governor Kevin Stitt on July the 23rd of this 2021. John has practiced law in Oklahoma for over 40 years. Throughout his career, he primarily focused on civil litigation, including complex commercial and insurance litigation. He's also served as outside general counsel for numerous businesses and organizations. He's been nominated to the White House for federal judgeship. In 2018, President Donald Trump nominated John O'Connor as a candidate for United States District Judge for the Northeastern, Western, and Eastern districts of Oklahoma. He earned his bachelor's from Oklahoma State University, a law degree from the University of Tulsa College of Law. And he has been married to the love of his life, Lucia, for 43 years. And he has a wonderful testimony of the providence of God taking him into this office. I believe it's a divine appointment. And John is an unassuming man, though many letters. He's a man of prayer, a man of faith. He loves the Lord. It comes out easily when he's sharing. And I appreciate his humility and his leadership, his influence. And I just like hanging out with him. He's a good friend, and he is a good friend to Oklahoma. And we're honored to have him with us here tonight. Put your hands together and welcome John O'Connor, our Attorney General.
Hello, everybody. You may think that you're crazy, but you have to know I'm the craziest guy in the state, right? Who else would jump into the Attorney General's office in the middle of the issues that we are facing? Sometimes I say that I was dropped between a mongoose and a cobra. And it feels like that sometimes. But it's an honor for me to be with you tonight because I think of the verse where I think it's Paul writes, I thank God for the obedience that accompanies your confession of the gospel. And so what to me, what that stands for is the fact that as the Lord lives in you, you take action on that. And that's what City Elders is about, and is being out there and loving God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, loving our neighbor as ourselves, and getting involved. It's an honor for me to be the Attorney General for the state of Oklahoma, to be your Attorney General. After 40 years in the practice of law, and around all types of lawsuits, it turns out that is a great preparation for being the top legal officer for the state of Oklahoma for you. And as that top legal officer, that means that our office, and we have a great Attorney General's office in Oklahoma City and in Tulsa, about 190 employees, about probably 110 lawyers, and then a bunch of agents, and then some great administrative personnel. But so we represent the agencies, the boards, the commissions that you read about in the paper, at least most of them. We also have a consumer protection unit. You know, we have a group that goes out after the big storms and plants yard signs so that people won't give money to contractors who are going to deceive them, take their money, and leave town. So that's consumer protection. We also have victim services for the victims of crimes, and we have an insurance fraud unit. So it's a pretty crazy deal. And then also I'm the top law enforcement officer for the state as Attorney General. So the way that shows up, and I'm very proud to be in this role. In my first week, I went to meet with the the federal, state, and local officers who investigate and prosecute or help set up prosecution for human trafficking in Oklahoma. So it's a really weird deal. When I was in the private practice of law, you wake up thinking about your cases. Then a week later, you're the attorney general and you wake up thinking, we should put billboards on every highway coming into the state of Oklahoma that say, if you're involved in human trafficking, we will see you go to prison, right? The next week, I drove to Tulsa and met with the narcotics enforcers. And that's a great group. Our law enforcement this is a strange time for them. And that means it's a strange time for us, and it means it's a strange time for public safety. But as you know, there are places in our country where they're trying to defund the police. Now, isn't it odd that they see a spike in crime? Wow, I didn't see that coming. But our law enforcement officers are underpaid. They're underthanked. They put their own lives out there to protect our lives. So I'm honored and proud to stand with our law enforcement officers, and I hope that every time you see one, that you will walk over and thank them for their service. All right? The first week I was in office, I had the opportunity to sign on to a pro-life brief to support the law in Mississippi. And I went home that night, and my wife, Lucia, said, really, John, you're your first week and you're signing on a pro-life brief? And her point was, I've just alienated half the state. But she's as pro-life as I am. And I said, Lucia, that's a Supreme Court deadline. We can't get that waived. And so I will tell you that I represent 3.9 plus million Oklahomans, and it includes those who are not yet born. All right? Yeah. So in our laws, just so you'll know, if you run a red light and you go into an intersection and you hit a van and there's a pregnant mom in that van and she dies and her baby dies, that's 2 homicides, right? So our law already treats that child as a life. Also, if we're talking about endangered species, when we were protecting the American eagle, they protected the egg. When they were protecting a minnow, they protect the egg of that minnow. $100 million projects have been stopped because of minnow eggs. But the fact is, we don't protect the early stage of a human being, right? So it makes no sense. At any rate, it's an honor for me to be out there just acknowledging the truth that we all believe. But let me tell you, when General Hunter resigned, and Mike was a college friend, we held a fundraiser for him, Lucia and I did. When he resigned, I got a call asking if I was interested in being the Attorney General if the governor were so inclined. And I think they called 30 people. And so I said, yes, I would, but I'm not going to campaign for it. And then a week later, I woke up and I knew in my heart that I needed to pull my name out of that list. Because up to that point, the governor would call me when he needed prayer. He'd call a lot of people, but I would drive over there to pray with him, or when he needed help on picking a judge or on a policy issue. And what I did not want to do was to be a person who was asking for something from him. When he saw me coming, I wanted him to think of a brother in prayer, right? So I pulled my name from that list and even helped rank the top 3 other candidates. But what I did was I went back and that same morning I prayed, Lord, if you want me to be in that job, because I only want to be there if God puts me there. There's too much going on for anybody to handle with wisdom unless they have the confidence of knowing the Lord is there. So my prayer was, God, if you want me in that job, raise it up in the spirit of Governor Stitt, raise it up in the spirit of his wife, and the people who are fasting and praying for their decision. And so for 7 weeks, I kept thinking it was going to be somebody else and then somebody else and somebody else. We even had lunch with one guy, and he thought it was going to be him. And Lucia and I drove away from that lunch saying, well, we've just spent time with our next AG. But then one time, Lucia and I were driving through Oklahoma City on our way from Tulsa to El Reno to see a new grandchild. And I got a text from the governor saying, hey, can you come by the mansion? And I happened to be in Oklahoma City, so I said, sure. But even then, I thought he was just going to ask me to help him pick between A and B. But when I got there, it was clear that even though there were some great candidates, that he didn't have the right feeling in his spirit about those candidates. And so he said, I know you pulled your name, but would you consider if you're the guy that God wants us to appoint, right? So then I had a few meetings. Hey, Barney. And I had a few meetings with some people to follow that up, like the chief of staff, et cetera. And then I'm finally at a coffee one morning. Lucia, my wife, promises my time all the time to people. That's what happens at 43 years of marriage. I've quit fighting it, but anyway, so she was shopping at Dillard's in the purse department, and the lady who works there said her son's going to TU Law School. So Lucia said, oh, well, my husband would love to meet with him. So on that particular Monday morning, I'm down at Double Shot meeting with this first-year law student, and then I get a call, and I see it's Governor Stitt, and I think he's going to say, hey, John, thanks for being available, but I'm going to go with this other person. So I don't even excuse myself from this little table. I just say, hey, excuse me one second. And he goes, John, congratulations, you're the AG. And then he says, but don't tell anybody. Because they wanted to work out the timing and everything. So I'm sitting so close to this young law student that I can't really say, wow. So I just say, well, okay, thank you very much. I appreciate the call. And so I know he kind of held the phone like, anyway. So that was a Monday morning, and I was sworn in on that Friday. And in the first press release, the first press conference in downtown Tulsa, before I was sworn in, I was asked my thoughts on the Roe versus Wade and the pro-life thing. And just instinctively, I said, life begins at conception, and I'm going to stand for the unborn. And then I was asked questions about the McGirt decision, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But at any rate, it was amazing. And then all of a sudden that Friday afternoon, I'm signing the oath and taking the oath over in Oklahoma City, and my wife looks at me and says, "Have you read that?" It was like 2 sentences long, and I've been practicing law 40 years. I've never signed anything I didn't read, and I've been reading things for people forever. But anyway, that's what happens. So Lucia and I, my father was a machinist. I was born at St. John Hospital, raised at Marquette and Bishop Kelly. Dad was a machinist. Mom stayed at home. They had 6 kids, and all 6 of us put our own way through Oklahoma State University. And by the way, it's been hard for me to go to OU games, and here's an All-American right here from OU. I had to actually buy an OU shirt because I represent the entire state, not just the Cowboys. Yeah. But that shirt itches weirdly. But anyway, so I met, out of our 6 kids, Mom and Dad didn't have a year of college between them. But I gained an immense respect for people who have an honest job, who have the dignity of earning a paycheck, who make ends meet on a limited salary, and go about their lives and raise their families in faith. And all six of us put our ways through Oklahoma State University, and out of that group, you've got 2 lawyers, a PhD in civil engineering, 2 MBAs, and a master's in blood banking or blood association. So anyway, that's what'll happen when you polish your dad's boots on Saturday night and there's gravel in them from working in the rail yard, right? But that is the American dream, right? And that dream is that if you'll work hard and if you set goals, you can achieve amazing things. And God gives you those opportunities. So I'll fast forward here for a second. I got out of I went to TU Law School after that. And during college, I went through a phase where I was asking whether God was real. And during that phase, what was driving me was I thought, if everybody's as big a hypocrite as I am in church, then everybody's faking it. And I knew I was faking it. I knew some of my friends were faking it. So, but at OSU, there was a group of people, some U.S. senators and some business leaders, who decided to come to Oklahoma State University and have a national student leadership forum. And in that forum, what we were going to do was study the moral and spiritual implications of leadership by looking at the life and teachings of Jesus. And so during that period of time, I went from wondering if God was real to realizing that he was the most real thing. And so I peeled back all the layers of my guilt and all that kind of stuff, and just focused on getting to know the person of Jesus. And so for those of you who wonder, I'm a Roman Catholic saying Jesus is Lord. All right. And speaking of that, my wife, I met her at Oklahoma State University. She's from Buffalo, Oklahoma, which is north of Woodward. If you're not careful, you'll miss it. But first time I went out there, one of her brothers, I was looking out the back window, and one of her brothers was field dressing a deer hanging from the swing set. And the other brother, I went to take a shower, and he had called up a couple of coyotes, shot them, skinned them, and the pelts were hanging in the shower drying. So, note to self, don't mess with her brothers. Right. But at any rate, fast forward then a few years, Lucia and I were out in Buffalo, and she grew up in the First Christian Church. And so the secretary of the church called and said, "Hey, the pastor's sick or something, and he can't do the service tomorrow morning. Can one of you all do it?" And so Lucia, my wife, always says yes. And then she looks at me and says, I don't like to speak to crowds. So here's this Catholic guy, and I said, "Honey, that's the First Christian Church. They don't want a Catholic in there talking about something." Anyway, I got up at 6 a.m., went and had some biscuits and gravy, and wrote a talk. And at the end of my talk in the First Christian Church, this tall farmer stands up and he goes, "We've just heard the gospel of Jesus Christ from a Catholic attorney from Tulsa." And somebody check outside because I think hell's frozen. But anyway, I had the honor of being the president of the Downtown Rotary here in Tulsa one year, and 2003. And Rotary, has a motto, service above self, which I think is the kind of byline in Jesus's life, right? That's Mark 10:45. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. And so that verse and that teaching in Rotary drew me to the greater service above self. And Rotary had this idea in 1985 that they were going to do away with polio. And so they had Dr. Sabin, I think it was, come to their international meeting, and they announced this big plan that by the year 2000, 15 years later, they were going to raise enough money to start ridding the world of polio. And Dr. Sabin congratulated them and then said, but let me tell you something. If you filled a 747 with kids 5 and under and crashed it into the tarmac every hour for 24 hours in a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, times that 15 years. That'll be the number of kids who catch fatal or crippling polio while you're trying to meet your 15-year goal. And so Rotary changed everything. They raised, a couple $100 million within about 3 years, and kept raising money and kept raising money and kept raising money. And we're down now to just a handful of new cases of polio in a couple of countries in Africa. And so my point of saying that is, why would I say yes when the governor calls and says, you're the AG? It's because I don't think we can wait any longer, right? I don't think we can have a 20-year plan to recover our pre-K through 12 schools. I don't think we can wait 20 years. I don't think we can wait 20 years to recover our universities. I met with one of the presidents of one of the universities, and he said, what can I do for you? And I said, stand for freedom of expression, not just for the liberals, but let the conservatives and let the faithful people talk too. And so the fact is, in so many areas of our lives, a 10-year plan and a 20-year plan is the end of the world, right? We need to be about it right now. And so that's what drives me. Although I am standing for election in June of this coming year, and I'm taking some positions that are incredibly unpopular in some spaces. But I'm not going to hedge. I'm not a politician. I don't want to be a politician. I'm too old to be a career politician. And I'm just a straight-talking lawyer who is going to represent the people of the state of Oklahoma, right? So there are some things that I know you want to hear about. We've got a vaccine mandate. This is, this sounds a little corny, but in a sense, we're carrying on what President Lincoln was talking about at the Gettysburg Address, right? At the end, that the honored dead, that as a result of that, we would resolve that there would be a new birth of freedom in our country, right? That a government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. Now, ever since then, it seems like the federal government just can't help itself. It's got to continue to expand like a gas to fill the volume. And every time it expands, we get more constricted, right? So we see that. How do we see that? The Biden administration has been taking the McGirt decision, which is a criminal law decision. The question was, what is the definition of Indian country for federal major crimes? That's the McGirt decision. But ever since it came out, it's been construed as a civil decision by the Biden administration. So they wrote Oklahoma and said, we're going to take over your surface mining regulation. We said, no, you're not. And we've sued them, and that lawsuit's pending. Now they're saying that our environmental laws are going to be preempted by the EPA, and that we're going to have to consult with whichever tribe has that historic reservation to get approval to build a building. And we're going to oppose that. Not because, let me say this, I grew up with Native Americans. They're Oklahomans like we are. They have Native American heritage. I respect them. I love them. They've been my friends. In Oklahoma, we have this incredible mixing of our cultures, right? We're not like a state that has a huge reservation and it's 98% people of that particular tribe that live there. Eastern Oklahoma is a beautiful blend of all of these folks. And then the Supreme Court drops this McGirt decision on us. And the Biden administration, I call it the Biden-Harris-Pelosi troika, because I can't figure out who's in charge. But they want to take over. And they want to mandate that we have to put a vaccine in our bodies that we may not trust, right? So I've had the vaccine, and I did it before I realized or heard that they used in the development of the vaccine tissue and blood from aborted children, right? And so there are many people who don't want to get the vaccine now for that very reason. There are others who don't want to get it because they don't know what the side effects will be. And but at any rate, I'm going to tell you that today, the state of Oklahoma filed a lawsuit against the Biden administration to seek to stop the vaccine mandate. And as you saw, OSHA finally came out with their regulation this morning. And so within the next week, we are going to get with some other states, and we're going to sue to enjoin that as well. All right? So, and I can tell you right now, you know, that healthcare services were understaffed when they went into COVID. And now they're going to have these vaccine mandates, and probably 20% of their employees are not going to get them for any reason. I had the owner of a number of nursing homes in my office, and he said that they did a little survey monkey deal with their employees. And they said, hypothetically, if you were offered $10,000 to get the vaccine, would you do it? And a large percentage said, no way. And so I think we're going to see a situation where our hospitals are going to have fewer beds available. They're going to stack people up in the ERs. And I think we're going to see a situation where our nursing homes cannot staff all the people they have. So people who need to get into the nursing home are not going to be able to get into it. We're going to have a public health crisis. I also had some fighter pilots in my office 2 weeks ago. There were 8 of them, and they said we represent 16 in our wing, F-16 wing based in Tulsa. And that wing is a part of our national security. There are 6 of those groups that fly and protect essentially the world. They monitor all the time. And 16 of those 35 do not want to get the vaccine. And they have an average of 12 to 15 years of experience. If they don't stay in our military, we can't just go take a college grad and make them into a 15-year experienced pilot, right? So, and I think our military, Senator Inhofe has been trying to get them to not make this mandatory on the military. We're going to have in my opinion, we're going to have a national security crisis as a result of this vaccine mandate. And guess what's going to happen then? In about 4 months, the federal government's going to say, oh my gosh, look at all these people that don't have a job. Let's go get $2.7 trillion and let's roll it out and give it to everybody. And let's extend it for another 6 months, right? So I keep trying to figure out what their end game is. Are we supposed to be a bunch of sheep eating grass on a hillside and dependent upon a check from the federal government? Okay, that's against that thing we call the American dream. And we all know that if we take away the incentives and the rewards for hard work and for the incentives and rewards for innovation, that our company, our country, and our economy are headed in the wrong direction, right? When I was in after law school, Rotary sent Lucia and me to Germany, and I tested into the German university. And at that time, I went into Berlin, and I could see the difference between West Berlin and East Berlin, the difference between a free market and a communist country. And it was like gray and bland and 40 years old. Everything was old compared to lively, colorful, energetic life. And so there's no place they can point where a socialist economy has worked, right? In fact, here's the hypocrisy in that. Everywhere there's been communism, the people are out there in poverty. But somehow there's a ruling class of people with long black Mercedes and extra condos down on the lakes, right? So that's a failed experiment, and we don't need to do it here. We also don't need to be teaching our kids that America is a failed experiment, right? We are a great nation. You know? We are not perfect. We didn't start off perfect. We're not perfect today. We haven't been perfect at any time along the way. But we've been getting better all the time. And so to teach our kids history based on our failures and to lump us as automatically racist is really racist, right? All these years we've been hearing about HIPAA, don't tell us about your medical history, and now we want to know if you've been vaccinated. But the government doesn't even believe its own science, right? Natural immunity is so much more powerful than the vaccine, but they're not making natural immunity one of the exceptions. The Biden administration is using your and my paychecks to bludgeon us to get the vaccine. And they're using our private employers as the bad guys to do the dirty work. Our private employers are not the bad guys. It's the people who sit in Washington who've never made a paycheck outside of a government check, right? We have a grand opportunity right here, and that's to obey so that people around the country, instead of saying we're the reddest state in the union, but look at we're top 10 in X and we're top 10 in Y. You know, we have an unusual number of children who go to bed hungry at night. We have some elders who go to bed without health care. We have this grand opportunity to show the country what a state like Oklahoma, with our good people in a free market capital society, with our family values and our faith, what that can look like when it's applied in a state the size of Oklahoma, right? Okay, so that goes back to that verse I was talking about at the very beginning. I thank God for the obedience that accompanies your confession of the gospel. Amen. Right? Okay, so I'm sorry to say right. It sounds like I'm selling real estate. You know, buy low and sell high, right? Right? But no offense to the real estate people. I've already got too many opponents in the big pharma, the Native American tribes. But we need to seize the moment. Think of the Republican leadership we have. Think of the people who can come together in prayer. We need to each one of us take personal ownership of every person in our state. And it starts with our block, and then it starts with the next block, and then the neighborhood. Because if we don't do this, then the proof will be that the gospel does not work. And that'll just affirm what the liberal states believe anyway. They don't want to see us succeed, right? But if we take it personally, if we just say, We want to see the date when Oklahoma can say there's not one child going to bed hungry in our borders, right? If there's a young lady who's pregnant, we don't need to wait for the laws to outlaw abortion. We need to love her and provide every resource we can for her, right? I said right again. Yeah. So think about the areas where you think Oklahoma should be the best. Think about the areas where a godly family would shine. And then dream about the day when other states are sending delegates to Oklahoma to study how our facts and statistics are so good and how they turned around, right? So that's the grand opportunity we have, and I'm so glad that City Elders has come into being and has drawn a great crowd like this and is working all around our state because we have 77 counties. If we love our neighbor as ourselves and we try just to start within our borders, then we can change our state and we can plant a flag in Oklahoma to be the evidence for the rest of our nation. All right? So I want to tell you that after 40 years in the practice of law, I'm used to fighting. My wife laments the fact that I don't need the approval of people. And so when an opportunity presents itself in the Attorney General's office, I pray for wisdom, for guidance, pray to do the right thing, pray to have an understanding heart to see right from wrong, and then we make the decision and we go forward. And I am grateful to you, to those of you who've been directly or indirectly praying for our leadership. I can feel it. I went into a meeting with one of our Indian Nation friends and the chief, and rather than do the lawyer thing and take my legal pad in with my 50 points on it, I left all the paperwork in the car and went in and said, I just want us to start a relationship with you. Because I believe that the solutions come out of the relationships, right? And so that's prayer that gets me to not leave my preparation, not take my preparation in there. It's prayer that in that second as I got out of the car said, just leave it. And I can feel the prayer going into every meeting, every decision we have to make. In John 15:5, he says, I'm the vine, you're the branches. If a man remains in me and my words remain in him, he'll bear much fruit. And then it says something very important. Apart from me, you can do nothing, right? So I want you to know that before I walk into every meeting and before I walked up here tonight, I say, Jesus, apart from you, I can't do anything here. And the fact is, his worst idea is 1,000 times better than my best goal, right? And a lot of those things have been happening. So I want to thank you for your prayers. It's an honor for me to be your Attorney General. It's an honor for me to be the tip of the spear and for my office to be the tip of the spear in these fights on your behalf. But please don't just hand it to us. We expect and we need you to be in the fight with us, okay? So take it to prayer every day and then get involved with city elders, get involved in our school boards and our city councils, and let's make that grand Oklahoma so everybody can see. Thank you.